Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Inspired Online. I'm Shay Ali, and I'm joined with you today with the lovely Sam Walker. Now, Sam is slightly different from some of the other guests that you might have seen on this show so far. She has done an amazing work for a start, working with women and their rights in the workplace. Now, she's got a background in HR. She's worked for many large companies. She's been made semi-famous by suing Co-op as their HR director, who was not paid equally while she worked there. She won her claim, although it's still ongoing in some aspects. And since then, she was so inspired by that experience. What she's been doing is working with other women who are in similar situations. So, you know, often these situations are very difficult. It's even difficult to bring up the fact that there is a problem, let alone take it through to tribunal, let alone win. And someone like Sam has been fantastic in just helping them have that support and creating all sorts of support networks out there for them. She's also a fantastic person. Personally, she has many children.
Not all mine.
Not all yours, both hers and her husband's living together as one big happy family right now. You love gardening as well and all sorts of other things. So it's been a real joy getting to know Sam, and I thought let's have her on Inspired Online and get you to share your wisdom with the world and with our audience. So Sam, welcome.
Thank you.
No problem. It's such a joy to have you on. And I want to start with the question that I start with all my guests, which is, if you had to share your wisdom with the world in a nutshell, what would you say?
Yes, 10-minute warning I think I had on this one, so very difficult. There are so many things I could share, but at this stage, and following on from the introduction you've just given me, I would say the greatest wisdom that I would share at the moment is HR working with legal when it comes to some of these cases. I've got insights into business that the barristers and the lawyers that these women hire just don't have. So they're fighting the law, they're fighting, you know, statute, things that are put down in law, but actually in the background I'm going, well, they'll have documents about this because all HR departments do, or you can get that information from payroll, or, well, if they've claimed this, ask that. So there's an awful lot of insights that I'm able to give to these women, and more importantly to their legal teams at the moment, where when an employer says, oh, we just don't have that information, or we can't find that information, or it would take far too long to get that information, I'm like, no, you can press a button on payroll and get that. That's just rubbish. And it's proving to be really, really helpful. Also, having been a practitioner and actually understanding grading systems in companies and job evaluation systems, again, their legal representatives, the women's legal representatives in this, haven't got that background experience. So they won't understand if a company throws a whole load of hay measurements or Towers Watson Willis measurements or any of the, you know, the standard job evaluation McLachlan that's used in financial services. What they wouldn't have is the expertise to look at them and go, hang on a minute, you haven't applied that right. You've twisted how you do that application to suit your case, and you're not actually doing it properly. So I suppose my biggest insight is the strength of having someone from HR who's had significant experience across a multitude of industries working with the legal teams for these women, because, you know, I haven't lost one yet. Not really.
Good stuff. Well done, you. And you know that I'd endorse everything that you've said. You know, I'm a barrister, but I'm certainly not someone that is familiar with the ins and outs of how some of the job evaluation schemes do their thing. You know, and also one of my professional obligations is I'm not allowed to even, you know, coach any of my witnesses. So I get asked, what shall I say? And I have to go, that's just beyond what I'm even allowed to do. I can't tell you that. You just need to tell the truth. So that's as far as I can take it. But working with someone like you, obviously, because you've been on the other side and having to give evidence, you're actually allowed to say stuff like, how to come across, how to present yourself, that can be really helpful.
Yeah, what not to say, how to say it. So, yes, I hate to say it, a lot of coaching of how to be in tribunal. I've helped quite a number of the BBC ladies, which I know not in all countries you won't have heard of that, but here in the UK, an awful lot of coaching before they go on the witness stand. Everything from how to respond, not to get riled by the other side's barrister who will try and make you angry, how to not lose your temper, right down to sensible dress wear for court. And I know barristers and the solicitors can't do that. So
no. I think I probably can get away with fashion advice, but beyond that.
Yeah, it's very interesting, actually. It's very interesting. It's funny because I think if you ask some of the women who I have been working with over the last few years what they value the most, at the time, obviously, they massively value the coaching. They value the insights into what to ask for under disclosure and all the job evaluation, all the techie stuff is all valued at the time. But if you ask them after the event and after the hearing and, when they've been able to move forward into the future, it's the emotional support that they valued the most. It's the ability to pick up a phone, to email or text me at any time of day or night, and I usually get back. Because when you're in it, you don't sleep. When you're in it, you don't, hours aren't normal hours, and you can't just pick up the phone to your legal team at 2:00 in the morning. But sending a text where someone texts back and says, hey, come on, you can do this, it means the world when you're lying there alone at night to know that you're not alone.
And, equal pay has become like this really big issue. And, we know about the Me Too pay movement as well. What would you say to someone that is having a suspicion that, hey, I'm not being treated fairly at work. I'm not too sure exactly what's going on, but I have an inkling that I'm being paid less or that this treatment just isn't right. Where do you start?
I would say, with the benefits of my experience now in hindsight, you start with your male colleagues, because if you do go to the boss, the whole thing gets shut down very, very quickly. Not with all bosses, but they go, whoa, got a problem, someone's sussing us out, whoa, shut down. And before you know it, before you've even started to try and have those conversations with your male colleagues, someone's already been to them going, don't say anything. The other issue we have in the UK is that in many contracts of employment, it actually states, it's actually got a clause in the contract of employment, you shall not discuss your pay. Now, it's not enforceable. I know it's not enforceable, but at the time we tried to get it banned, that actual clause, and it is banned in most of Europe, we had a Conservative government in place here, and they stopped short of making it an illegal clause. They just said it's unenforceable. So unfortunately, it still remains in many, many employment contracts. And therefore, many, many men in this country genuinely think that if they discuss their salary, they're going to be in breach of contract and they could get the sack. Yeah. So that's the first hurdle. Sorry?
Which they can't.
It's a genuine belief.
So please support your ladies, men, if you get asked, I would say.
Exactly. So there's several things. First of all, the guy will think he can be sacked because there's a clause in his contract. Secondly, talking about salaries is still a really taboo subject. We're very British here. It's just not done. So trying to get a male colleague to open up and talk about the fairness. And when I've coached women who are going to approach a male colleague, I've sort of said to them, do a little bit of homework. Have they got kids? Have they got a daughter? Have they got a granddaughter? Do they want their kids growing up with this inequity? Appeal to that side of them because they will be scared. They will be scared that if they speak and if they tell you, they'll be either sacked, or they won't get a pay rise that year, or they're going to be the one that's not promoted when they're in a pool of people that could go for promotion. They'll be looked over for promotion because they very dared speak to you. It all comes back fundamentally to their own job insecurities. But if you can get a male comparator to agree to talk to you, and Shayla, you can back this up, if they agree and they confirm that they believe they're doing the same work as you, and they're being paid more, I have not come across one single case where a woman has lost when they've actually had that man support them.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because that's the test. Is it like work, and are you being paid more?
Yeah.
And if you are, then that is illegal, unless the employer has other reasons for which I'm not going to go into the whole legal technicality. But it's a great starting point actually for you to do that. Now, you talked about women needing that emotional support, and actually it isn't just women. There are plenty of, the other protected characteristics, age, religion, race, there's plenty of people out there that are having this unfairness at work. What would you say to them about maybe seeking that emotional support, or if they need emotional support, what's one of the first things that you would say to them that might help?
I would say reach out to some of the charities that exist at the moment. I'm about to set up a support network purely for women who've gone through equal pay with another lady who won her case. But there are many, many charities out there. We have, here in the UK, we have Protect, which is actually supporting people who are whistleblowing. There are lots and lots of charities. So I'd reach out to some of the charities who provide that support first, because they'll put you in touch with other people who are going through or have been through exactly the same thing. And it's like anything, if you feel you're not alone, it's the first step to feeling stronger, knowing that you're not in it alone. I have a real bugbear with the way that the UK is set up with some of our regulators. And now you've mentioned it, one of the things I'll talk about is sexual harassment work, because obviously that doesn't just happen to women.
No.
It happens to all sorts of people. And we have a regulator here in the UK called the Health and Safety Executive. And they won't have anything to do with sexual harassment. It's linked to employment. You have to go through the employment regulators if you need help, if you feel you've been sexually. One human being who has been sexually harassed at work and has not suffered mental illness as a consequence, has not suffered mental illness as a consequence. So why do we have a regulator in this country, Health and Safety Executive, where if you get your arm cut off at work, or you have breathing difficulties because you've had to work with asbestos for years and years, or you lose your hearing because of the noise in the environment at work, all those physical conditions that you can suffer as a result of your workplace, they are there to support you. They are there to actually, bang the employer to rights. And yet, if you suffer mental illness through harassment at work, any sort of harassment, sexual or otherwise, they won't touch it with a barge pole. They don't see it as part of their duty.
That's really unfortunate.
Why is that?
Well, that's not something I can answer. I don't know.
Yeah. But I think the whole mental illness versus physical illness, especially given COVID now, and especially what employers are seeing and people are feeling through lockdown globally, I think the whole difference between the way that we tend to treat physical illness versus mental illness is going to take a massive shift in the future going forward as a result of COVID.
Fingers crossed. Well, that would be nice to see it being taken more seriously. But certainly, there are other things that people can do. So you can go see your doctor, obviously get some help like you, Sam, or, I have a lot of guests on here that are coaches and things like that. So, that assistance is out there, but you need to want to get it. And I think the first step is just reach out and see what's out there.
Reach out, find someone else who's been through it or gone through it is my first advice, you know, because that empathy you can only really get from someone who's been there. Yeah.
And I love what you said about you're not alone, because a lot of people, you know, going through this might think they're alone, and you know, actually you have women like Sam out there, and you know, organizations like Protect, like Fawcett Society, who you are a trustee for as well, that will help you, you know, and remind you that actually you aren't alone. I'll ask you this question. What would you like to see change? I know, you know, government is very wrapped up in what's going on right now with the COVID-19 situation, but what can we look forward to as some of the changes, do you think?
If we stick with my bugbear at the moment, which is equal pay, I would like to see far more countries do what Iceland has done and just make it illegal, completely illegal, and publish what, you know, people are being paid. So you have got certain countries, and you know better than I, Shayla, which ones those are, where it is standard, it's norm for people's end of year tax returns to be online, everyone can see it, there's complete transparency. And I think once you've got that transparency and you've got a law that says it's illegal, then it gets rid of it. And you know, here we are in the UK, it's the 50th anniversary of the Equal Pay Act. We're not even close to equal pay in any sector, and that includes the national health, that includes education. I mean, it's horrific. So even in our public sector, we're not even close to equal pay, and our government knows that. They absolutely know it. They send people in the same grade. You can join as a graduate into the NHS, but 6 months after joining, they know full well that the guys are getting paid more than the women. So, you know, unless there's a law and unless there's transparency, we can't get that changed.
So you said that it's a much bigger problem than we think. Can you talk a little bit more about the extent of what is actually going on? Because some people, yeah, certainly this is in my experience, have been sitting in their job for years and they don't know. So
No.
what is going on?
Well, again, talking about your salary is a taboo subject. And I think, you know, a lot of people feel a lot of loyalty to their companies. You know, you give something of yourself. When companies have got their culture right, people will work for them because they feel connected to the company and they feel loyal, and there's a trust thing there. And that drives a complacency where people genuinely believe that it's not a thing. It's not a thing. So, you know, Moya Green, who set up the hashtag #MeTooPay campaign here, who is CEO of EasyJet, but prior to that, Royal Mail, she had no idea. She left Royal Mail and her successor was a man, and the man immediately got, you know, X% more pay than her. And she went, what? You know, I had no idea this was a thing. And the minute she spoke out, loads of other people that came to her and went, it's a thing, it really is. What we also know is it's a thing, especially over the age of 40. So women who have managed to break through that glass ceiling and are senior and have worked through into senior management and are now in their 40s, you know, potentially post-family and all the rest of it, and are still career driven, are being paid substantially less than their male counterparts. And we know that fact.
Now, slightly different type of question. You obviously won your personal case, and I know that things are still going on, but I'm just interested in the mindset that you used to win, because not everybody wins these claims. You know, The Guardian actually said it's quite rare to win these claims, and that's been echoed by some of the judges. What kind of mindset did you have to go out and win?
I was lucky. I think I was lucky as a starting position, luckier than most women, because I was in a senior HR role and I had access to the data. So I copied the data before I said anything. So I had the data, I had the information, I knew, I had the facts. You know, most women have no right to that data. You can ask your employer, is so-and-so being paid more than me, or am I being paid compared with that person? And they have no right to demand that data, and the employer has no right to give that data. And in fact, in many cases, they'll use GDPR, data protection, and say, oh, you can't have it, which is just not true. So the data is just not published. So I had a mindset of, but I know the truth. And I think it's very, very difficult for other women who are going into this. They have a feeling, they have a sense, they may have had a conversation with a male colleague who initially confirmed it, and then basically pressure's put on and they back out and they can't rely on that. And so they're relying on a conversation that's probably an historical conversation with a male colleague who now doesn't want to be named, doesn't want to be part of the case. And you know, the strength those women have to go forward with a belief that they're right based on what was a conversation a long time ago. Whereas I went forward going, I've got it here, I've got it all in writing, I know I'm right, and I'll prove you wrong. And I was so incensed by the scale of it. One of my male comparators after bonus earned 3 times more than me. This is at a senior level. After bonus, 3 times more than me. Yeah. And also on bonuses, I found out that year, and we found out through court, that I was the only employed female. We had a consultant female, but I was the only employed female executive on the co-op executive team that year. We found out that the Remco had given everyone an extra 10% in their bonuses because we changed the pension scheme. Well, they didn't give me that 10%, and they certainly didn't give 9,000 other employees that 10%. It was just the big boys at the top. And, you know, the CEO, that 10% would have been worth more than the whole of an annual salary of a shop worker. And he took that money. Now, for me, that's ethical. That's just wrong. And that's a company that espouses equality and equity in its values. And yet here they are taking an extra 10%. You know, hey, I'll have that. Stick that in with the extra hundreds of thousands I'm earning. You know, and that extra 10% was worth more than a whole annual salary of one of the shop workers. It's just wrong.
Wow. Yeah. So
I get angry. It's moral. It was those morals. It was the anger. It was the anger and the injustice of it that drove me forward, I think.
I was going to say, it looks like you need to have justice running through your veins, and just that belief that you're right. And I think, you know, there's a lot to be said for believing in yourself, you know, believing in justice. And I think what's beautiful also about what you did, but you didn't say this, is it wasn't only about you, but it was about, you know, perhaps making a stand for other women as well, who are in this situation, really shining a light on what's going on.
Yeah, it's still not about me. You know, the co-op itself employs over 76,000 people. So, you know, you're looking at in excess of 30,000 women there. And I had the stats I knew. And even last year in there, we have a gender pay gap reporting in the UK. And certain stats have to be, I mean, that reporting in itself is flawed, but could be better. But even last year, they had just below a 60% gap in bonus between men and women in the organisation. And that was 4 years after I bought my claim. And you just go, you know, it is the injustice of it. Has to stop.
Yeah.
Stop.
And you're working towards that. What about the other protected characteristics? Do they have a right to equal pay as well? So, do other protected characteristics have a right to equal pay as well? So, you know, what about someone who's got an age problem, or someone who's an ethnic minority that's been paid less? Would it be a similar process with them?
I think it is, isn't it? I mean, you're the barrister here, but absolutely. This is it's all about fairness, isn't it, at the end of the day? And it's so hard to prove. And I think, you know, one of the things that we talk about a lot at the Fawcett Society, as you mentioned, I'm a trustee, is, if you are a woman of colour, if you are a woman with different sexual orientation as well, trying to pick your way through a claim of, well, what's causing this treatment? Is it because I'm gay? Is it because I'm, not white? Is it because I'm female? Or is it all of the above? So where do you start your claim?
Yeah, it can be really tricky. I think, well, what I'll add for protected characteristics, then the Equal Pay Act is designed for gender specifically. So it could be a man or a woman, maybe men bring claims as well of not equal pay, and there have been some. But I think also the Fawcett Society is doing some work to make sure that other types of protected categories can have that same access. And there's other ways you can bring it. There's laws that you can use to get it in there.
But not that one.
It just doesn't work quite the same way.
The law needs to change, and we've put in an equal pay bill where we're actually trying to get some of those things to change the law in the UK. One of the biggest things that we want to change in that is the right to know, because the starting point, as I said, I had an advantage compared with many other people who claim is that I had the statistics, I had the information. But actually, if you had that right to the information before you went anywhere near a court, one, it would save the courts a lot of time, because they'd only hear cases where there is a case to answer, and you shouldn't have to go to court just to get the information.
It's very sad, to have to
ridiculous.
Bring that claim first. And it might be one of the positive things to come out of Brexit, actually, because I understand that was changed so the laws could be harmonised. I'm not 100% sure on that, but we used to have the right to know through a questionnaire.
We used to, yeah. I'm not so sure with the current incumbent government. Gender equality is not high up on their agenda.
Bojo doesn't believe in gender equality. We can't say that, can we?
We can't say that online, no.
Yeah, we might. So Bojo, if you were listening, that this would be nice for you to consider.
It'd be nice to be wrong, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we'd love that. Have you got any final words of encouragement for our viewers who might be going through something like this at work?
Don't give up. If you started this journey and you did it with a core belief of fairness, don't give up. There's a lot of support out there. Many women, and it's not wrong to do this, will get halfway through the process and their employers will offer them a deal to go quietly. And as I say, you can't underestimate the mental health impact this has on individuals that go through this process, not just for themselves, but for their families, for their friends. It's all consuming for years and years and years, which is why I reached out and decided to do something more positive and help other women, because I think all my family and friends were sick to hearing about my cases. So I can talk about loads of other people's cases now as well, and yet still stay on subject. So yeah, I would say
the conversations at your house must be interesting.
I think that's it really. Yeah, it's all about fairness and equality for me. So yeah.
Nice. And if someone would like to get in touch with you or come to one of your support groups or anything like that, where can they do that?
Usually people find me on LinkedIn. I literally stopped my profile where it said that I was the Chief HR Officer at the Co-op, and I didn't put anything else on there, and I literally just put a single one-liner going equal pay campaigner and support, and people find me. I am inundated. So what I'm not going to do is promise that I can help absolutely everyone. I do a lot of pointing people in the right direction, especially here in the UK, because sometimes it's not me they need. They don't know what they need, and I can actually coach and help and advise and say next step and point them in the right direction. So I won't ever not answer, but it may not be that you're just coming to me. I'll point you in the right direction.
Wonderful. All right. Well, we'll share the LinkedIn link anyway on our pages. We're at facebook.com/inspired stage. Thank you so much for joining us today. And hopefully lots of people out there would have got lots of value from that. And remember, as Sam said, if you are going through problems at work, you're not alone. You can get support, have a belief in yourself, and you'll get through this.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, Shayla, is if you're an employer and you're watching this, get a conscience, do something about it.
I'd agree with that too. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sam. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.